Okay, I think we have everybody that signed up to come to the meeting, so I think we'll go ahead and get started.
Sweet.
So I'm gonna do just a short presentation to start us off, and then we'll leave most of our time to have conversation and hear your all's feedback on some of the concepts that we have. If you do want to use the chat feature for some of your comments or questions, make sure it's to everyone, and then we can make sure we take good notes of all that. We're going to be doing a sticky note exercise kind of later, and so if you do any comments or feedback in the chat box, it's really easy to put on the sticky notes. But also happy to have people be on video and share their thoughts and questions in person as well. So I will just kick us off with a quick presentation, and then, as I said, we can get going to feedback. So. Am I showing the right screen, Steve? Is that me up?
Not yet. You
Okay.
still have the note,
Thank you.
the next slide version. Yep.
Okay. All right.
So, and I think it's Hassan, you're typing really fast. Please mute yourself because you're a loud typist.
Sounds like you're good at it, though.
It's usually me, but I can't type anywhere near that.
Will do.
All right. So as I said, we're going to start off with kind of how we got here and some of the steps that have led us here, and then kind of talk through potential future next steps in this process and the new survey and concepts that are currently up on Guiding Golden. We're going to talk a little bit about the walking tour where we did a kickoff last weekend. And then, as I said, we'll leave most of our time for discussion of the concepts and hearing feedback from everybody here. So the project really kicked off at the end of last year when the Miller Coors property became available to purchase. And, we really looked at that originally, that building, and if it was possible to reuse that building in any way. And of course, our feasibility study showed that it would take a lot of money and a lot of work to get that building to a place that we could use for the uses that we were looking at. So mostly civic uses and then some community type uses. And so we were able to get all that information. And then City Council decided that purchasing the property and the building was still really a good idea for the city because it opened up so many possibilities along the creek corridor. This is, as many of you know, something that has been long talked about within the city, that having some different things happen along the creek corridor that might be more community friendly would be something that we'd all really kind of like to see. So consolidating and improving the municipal facilities and service delivery were big parts of that as well. And so we really started the process with the vision and what does your dream corridor look like? What uses would you like to see and where? And what uses are most important to you? So we did some work on that. And then we were kind of moving a little bit into key features and where they should be located, and putting some concepts together to get feedback on. And we've really looked at this stage as brainstorming concepts. So putting together some images out there and then getting feedback and listening to what the community really likes and really doesn't like. And just as a way to really have that conversation going. So we were in the middle of kind of kicking off the refining stage when the pandemic hit, and we were able to have one in-person meeting. And then it really moved mostly online, as many things have. And we've still been working on collecting feedback online. But this has really been a great opportunity for us to hear more from the community and really take this project piece by piece and think through each aspect and really listen to how the community views this corridor, and keeping in mind that all of this is a really long-term legacy project for the city, and we're not in a hurry to accomplish any of these things. They're really part of this long-term vision. So as I said, the feedback collection so far has really been board and commission meetings, community meetings, stakeholder groups such as yourselves, guiding Golden, and surveys and discussions. And really, this is just the beginning. This will continue, and we hope to continue these conversations with all of our stakeholder groups as this project moves forward into the next several years. So this is a timeline about next steps. And of course, you must look at this with a little bit of a grain of salt, knowing that in this day and age, it is very difficult to talk about next steps. So currently we are in the designs with feedback. So we're really putting out different concept ideas, putting together different kind of packages of uses, and just getting feedback and really listening to how the community is reacting to it, what they really want to see, what they'd like to see more of, and just really starting this conversation with the community. Towards the end of this year and into the beginning of next year, we hope to do more work onto the Clear Creek management side of things. So a task force and some community feedback about specifically some of the short-term fixes that can be used for managing the creek. We had a lot of challenges this year with COVID and the creek, and people using the creek, but of course this isn't the first year that we've had issues either. So just another conversation about how does the creek function and what are some ways we can address some of the issues that we're having. So we're going to work on that through the winter, and as I said, really look at kind of those short-term fixes as well as what are the long-term fixes that Heart of Golden really is getting at, and what are ways that we can address some of these big picture items. Then another aspect that we want to do more research and kind of dig a little more focused energy into is the cultural facility aspect of the plan. So this is something where we would like to look more into other cities' models and get more detail about different ways that cultural centers can look in cities and as part of this plan. So then this is sort of the big question mark, is when we come back to the Heart of Golden project, possibly next year or the year after, and check back in on the feedback. You know, what's changed since this last year of information we've collected, what focus groups and polling can be done to really get our arms around what the next stages of this project can look like and where we want to be as a community. And then this would be the time where we're going to get into more detail about funding and selecting a plan and really seeing if the community supports it, likely in a ballot measure of some kind. So obviously this will depend, and this could be broken out into different steps on different years. There's a lot of different ways this could look. So I think right now we're just staying flexible on what that future plan looks like. And again, really interested in what's best for Golden and what's going to accomplish the big picture dream that we're all kind of thinking about with this project. And then of course, construction just goes on and on and on after that. So far in this process, there's been some themes and feedback that we've heard. So none of these are decisions that have been made, and they are not anything that is set in stone by any means. But they are things that we've heard from the community and have carried forward into this round of concepts. So some of these themes are the new building development concentrated into the east. A lot of the feedback we heard from the community was to try to leave the central zone part of the creek corridor as open as possible and as green as possible. And again, not everybody said that, but it's just been a theme so far. Parking structure in the east zone to support the civic buildings and for downtown. Open space network along the creek corridor with largest open spaces concentrated in the central west zone. A creekside amphitheater suitable for larger events on the east zone. And then the possibility of replacing existing Lions Park baseball fields with open space or other recreational opportunities. And then existing Parfit Park and Vanover Park uses to remain largely unchanged. I'll go back to these again later when we're all kind of having more of a conversation about these and see if some of these are things that you see as being true moving forward, or if there's something that kind of jumps out at you as something that you disagree with. We'd like to hear about that too. So right now on Guiding Golden, we have a Create Your Own Corridor survey. This survey is really focused on the location of 3 buildings, which are the library, the fire department, and the museum. The reason why it focuses on these 3 is just because they seem to have the most variation in feedback that we've heard. And so we wanted to get a little more information and hear from people on where their preferred locations of those are. There is, I think in the survey, 45 potential different outcomes of what just those 3 buildings locations would result in. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the amount of variation that's possible in this plan and the different ideas that are out there. There's also a survey called the Revisit Priority Survey. And that survey is really meant for anybody that has not yet participated in the process and really wants to think through some of those earlier questions that I brought up as far as what's your vision for the corridor and what uses do you see being important. The reason why that's there too is that, you know, as I said, these are not decisions that have been made yet. We are really just trying to show different concepts and then listen to the feedback that's out there. And so nothing's off the table completely. We're listening to the feedback we're getting, and that survey is just kind of another way to get that feedback. So then I mentioned the walking tour. So our kickoff for this event was on the 19th of September, and we had staff at each one of these stations along the creek corridor with a different exercise at each station and focusing on that particular area while you're there in person and can kind of look around you and discuss the changes that are being talked about. So right now we're in the process of getting signs made for each one of these areas that will have a QR code like you see on the screen that you can use with your phone to watch a short video about that specific activity in that area. And then you can go online and do the specific exercise that we did on the day of the actual walking tour kickoff. So the idea here is just to give people various ways of participating and a way to do something kind of in person, even though it's not all the way in person, sort of that hybrid model of doing things online and having people kind of go out and really walk the corridor and share their thoughts with us. So that's another thing that we've been doing to hear feedback. All right, and now I'm going to switch over to our other screen. Okay. Are you seeing the screen with the maps now, Steve? Okay, cool. All right, so to kick us off, we're going to talk a little bit about those feedback themes. Go ahead, Steve.
Just make sure you know we're on the left side of the page.
Okay.
By the themes.
Gotcha. Cool. So to start off, we're going to talk about these feedback themes that I mentioned before, and just kind of put it out there as if anyone has any feedback specifically about these that they want to mention, we can type, or questions about them, we can talk through them now, and then I'll scroll over to the maps and we can have a little more conversation. So if you want to put any questions or comments in the chat box, that's fine. Or if you want to unmute, that is fine as well.
Is there a way to show the map of the concentration of buildings in the East Zone while we talk about things?
Yep, I will swing us over to the maps and we can use that to start the conversation. Okay, so
Carly, one problem I'm having is I'm having trouble taking notes as rapidly as you're showing the slides. So will we be able to access these slides later?
yes, sir, I'll make sure they're available for you.
Thank you.
I apologize for that. Okay, I am now on just concept 1. And just as a reminder, these are really not meant to be taken as the entire concept. It's not a, I prefer this concept, let's go with that. It's really more about the details and preferences that you see in the feedback that you have for each area. So for concept 1, we have the museum and the library in the central area.
Hey. Sorry.
And then we have the fire department moved over towards the east, and City Hall, police, and cultural arts facility with the amphitheater over to the east side. And then it's really kind of a Vanover Park extension, a lot of green space along that east corner there. And then improved Water Street, that would be a festival street that could hold things like the farmers market or events. And then the plaza space kind of over by the cultural arts center and the amphitheater could be used for events like that as well.
This is by far one of my favorite design layouts because I like how the fire department, city hall, and police all take advantage of that surplus property that's in the east zone. And in the other ones, they some of that is left open, and fire department, city hall, police, all those city services. Sure, I'm sure those people would love to be on the creek, but I'd rather just get pushed back, into the surplus properties areas, so that we can make more room for more of these community, amenities. So that's one of the things right off the bat that I liked about it. The museum, I think, being centrally located is important because I think, Nathan and his staff would probably want to be as close to the history park as possible if they're still going to interpret that area. And I think maybe in one of the plans I saw that maybe the museum was on the eastern zone. And I think that creates a problem for them to have it so far removed from the history park. So that is my feedback right now. I guess the last thing I'll say is having the parking right there on the corner of Washington and across the street from Parfit there. It seems that could we stick? That's such a prime piece of real estate. Could we find somewhere else to put parking? Or I realize the visitor center needs parking, but could you put that on the other side of the museum instead of just right there on the corner? So, and then also having a parking lot on the corner, I could see could probably cause problematic traffic issues.
One of the things that I really like about this concept, and this was probably my favorite plan, in looking at what other cities have done, I love in the central zone how there are 2 giant anchor buildings, the museum and the library, and that walking path in between, that long corridor, really opens up that space, utilizes the green space really well, keeps it, I think, in line with what a lot of citizens want. But just having those 2 buildings anchor at each end, they're important facilities, and it's like a long walking mall in between. It's really well concepted there.
Thank you both for those comments. Those are good. Is there other comments?
I'll just add that, and I don't know if you're going to revisit this in concept. Are you going to plan on moving to concept 2 next, Carly?
Yep, I'll
Okay,
scroll down.
I'll hold it then.
And I'm also, if anybody wants to comment on something I've already passed, that's totally fine too. I'm happy to go back. So I will scroll down a bit so we can look at the concept 2 version. So this one has the library moved more to the west, with kind of open space where the ball fields are currently. This one has the museum moved across the creek, so in the history park area, and then has fire department in its existing location, and then a lot of nature play, garden type area in the central area. Then we still have the enhanced Water Street, the amphitheater, and Vanover Park extension still really present in this one. The cultural arts with parking, with kind of a bridge to the parking area, is here with the plaza in between. And then police and city hall are 2 separate buildings over there towards the east. And then the surplus properties left empty in this image.
Carly, one of the things that I thought was really nice about this plan is I like how that Water Street connection that goes past Vanover Park, across the street through Golden Mill, wraps around Parfait Park and ties into the main corridor of Golden. I would love to see that incorporated in Plan 1.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm remember that as I went through these plans, I went through number 1. I'm like, oh, that's nice. And then I went through number 2. I'm like, oh, this is kind of better. And then I got to number 3. I'm like, oh, now we're getting somewhere. Like, it was interesting, like as it was unfolding and doing 1, 2, 3, because there were elements in all of them that I liked. But for sure, definitely in this one, I love that concept. And because for PAC, like I can see a lot of opportunity to use public art to tie in all 3 of those zones together and make people, really want to travel the whole thing. And so, yeah, I love that piece of it. The other thing that's nice about this is that, speaking for the museum, if we want to have Golden History, even closer to a larger area that they're in charge of interpreting, well, that puts them right there. So I think that's definitely another viable option for sure.
Carly, could you say a word about the amphitheater there and how large that's anticipated to be? How many people, how many seats it could hold?
I'm trying to remember the size. I do know the cultural arts buildings on all of these plans is about 35,000 square feet. That's currently kind of what we have blocked out. I'm trying to remember how many seats were in the amphitheater. I think it was 200. Does that sound right at all to you, Steve?
I was trying to envision based on the parcels that comprise that area.
200 sounds actually low for an amphitheater.
Okay.
Indoor theater, I could see that, but the amphitheater, you can just kind of squeeze people in and probably just get a lot of people in there.
You're probably right. Because it's the same size as Vanover Park about, it looks like. So this is, so yeah, it almost looks like, I will follow up and get a better answer for you on that.
Thank you.
It is large, so you're right, Lynn, it's probably bigger.
Carla,
Sorry, I'm here?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
First of all, is cultural arts, is that a theater and art museum?
So right now, it's really something that we need to kind of do a deeper dive into. The options are really all open still at this point. There's potential for it to look a lot of different ways. So it's mostly comes from the fact that the community said that cultural arts and having some more facilities in the city was really important, but we haven't done more of a deep dive into what exactly that could look like and what are the variations. Steve and I were just talking about, it really could be more than one building. It could look it could be a lot of different things. So right now, that's not something that's set in stone. This is really just kind of an idea of potential of blocking out space for that cultural space, if that makes sense.
And then another question is, do you see this as part of the overall what the city will be getting bond for and paying for?
I'm sorry, Barb, I couldn't quite hear exactly what you said. I heard you say, do you see this as something we would have to bond for? Is that what your question was?
Do you think the Cultural Arts Center is part of the same debt package that includes City Hall and the police department and all that? Or will you expect the culturals to do their own fundraising?
Okay, I heard you that time. Thank you. So right now, we're really seeing that this one big project all together, and these are all things we've heard are really important to the community. I think when we go to that deeper dive into funding, that will be where we take, kind of this base idea and base feedback that we've gathered from the public this year, and we really say, here's the different ways that could look. So here's the all the way built out version that's totally phased in, and here's kind of a phased approach, and here's different costs if you took away different uses, and what are you interested in having along the corridor, and really talking with the community about what they want to see piece by piece. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Can I continue with questions?
Sure.
Okay. I can't tell from this drawing. Are you imagining that the Clear Creek History Park will stay where it is?
Steve, did you catch that? Clear Creek History Park?
Yeah, the History Park.
Yes, yes. In all of the plans, the History Park is there. In this plan, the museum is moved into kind of that area, so there would probably be some refiguring that would need to happen. But as Hassan pointed out, there is kind of a tie that could be kind of better utilized in this plan if that was something that we wanted to move forward as far as attaching the history museum more to the park and having them be a little more cohesive together.
Okay.
I would add something on the cultural arts aspect, and I'm glad that you're going to do a deep dive into it, because the thing that I think you'll find almost consistently everywhere is that the Performing Arts Center is a profit zone, meaning it actually brings in income. I mean, before the pandemic, we were 70% earned income at Miners Alley even, because, you sell tickets. And the vital performing arts aspect will actually support a lot of the other cultural other aspects in that building. And so I think you'll find that as you do the deep dive, if you talk to the Arvada Center, if you talk to Lone Tree, if you talk to Pace, we could go on, you'll find that that's always been true, especially if you can start bringing in touring companies and bringing in other types of things to help. It's a great funding source for all of the other stuff in that area. The case itself.
Thank you. That's a great point.
So I need to jump in, Len. Twice in that 2 sentences you said, when you do a deep dive, meaning the city. And that's not the way it needs to happen. It needs to be all of you guys with us.
Oh, I would love to be with you. I'm sorry. I thought you said earlier that the city was going to do a deep dive into this, but I am all on board. Whatever you need.
Right. And so one thing that comes up is the 2 functions that aren't city functions are the library and this idea that's just a germ of an idea of a cultural something. And to Barb's question, you would have to negotiate with the county about the library as well. They're in the plan because people value them so much. But that's why before we get a whole lot further, we need to try to figure out, well, what do we mean by incorporating cultural arts? So consider yourselves all drafted.
Steve? Hi, Steve. Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, Steve. Yes?
Yes, I don't know who this is, but yes.
It's Bill. I would just thank Len, because this is a discussion that the GCA group's been having for quite a while about serving all culturals. And also, I just had a quick question. In these germs of ideas, have you guys discussed a space for the symphony, or is it just too big?
Maybe I can contribute to that. The symphony is currently in the Wheat Ridge United Methodist Church and is moving back to the Green Center. But the Wheat Ridge United Methodist Church has 400 seats, and that's just too small for the audience. So the Green Center, having 1,000 seats, is a much better venue for us. And, you know, the symphony has about 6 concerts a year. The only concert that we have that might be an open door concert, which might be suitable for either Parker Park or the amphitheater, would be the end of summer concert, the day just before classes start. So Parker Park is probably a better venue for that because it's more like a family picnic where you bring your blankets and sit on the lawn sort of thing, rather than, and the kids are all running around and playing and dancing. And it's a sort of a festival atmosphere rather than what you might have in a cultural arts center where the things are a little enclosed. So the answer, Bill, I think, is that the cultural arts center that we're envisioning here is probably okay for small concerts of 4 or 5 instruments or something like that.
Right. Well, I didn't see you in there as Earl, so I didn't know you were there. And I mean, do you see the Green Center being a long-term solution for you guys?
It looks like the acoustics have been improved so much in the Green Center that it's a much better venue for us now.
Good. But I'd love to see you guys with your office back in Golden as well.
The other thing to keep in mind is, especially these days, is you can do a lot of creative types of seating. There's a lot of seating now that can fold away, that can be configured in any way. You could take almost all of it out and you could hold a wedding in there, or some kind of convention space. So there's a lot of flexibility. And Dendy, to your point, you might be able to get a lot more people in there than you think if you arrange the seating in the right way.
It might well be, and it might be that as the symphony blossoms, I wouldn't say mushrooms, as it blossoms, it might be more summer concerts as well.
And the amphitheater is great for that too.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you for all those comments. That's really cool to imagine. Christy, I can tell that you're talking, but I can't hear you. If you want to put anything in the chat box, I'm happy to read it. And okay, I'm going to scroll down to number 3, and we can keep chatting about any of the items that you all want to talk about. Okay, in concept 3, this one we have City Hall and Police in one building, and it's a taller building. So it's more like a 3-story building for city facilities, and then has the cultural arts kind of up in the corner there. The libraries moved to the east in this one as well. And then again, kind of more of the parking and the large amphitheater, open space, Vanover Park extension, and existing fire department and existing museum are kind of expanded a little bit in the areas that they are. And then everything else is pretty much open space, nature play space. Water Street, Festival Street kind of goes around Parfit Park the other way in this one. And I think you can kind of see, I'll go a little bit closer, but it goes around Parfit Park and then kind of connects to this in the middle central area zone. So it kind of has that Festival Street kind of running throughout in this one. And I think by the time you get to this third one, you can kind of, the variations are you could have this one and then still move the fire department over because the surplus property is open. There's kind of all the mix and matching that you can do with any of these.
So I think actually I like this one the most because it seemed like the cheapest one to do, because the existing fire department, existing museum, sort of, there you save some costs there, which I think, is palatable to the community, particularly with the fire department. And I like the open, you've got Vanover, this open space, and the amphitheater just all kind of connected to one another. The concern that I had with the amphitheater was what noise is coming from cores that may affect that. And if there's some that could be mitigated, then that is perfect. I love that setup.
That's an excellent point.
The other thing is that I thought, could we add to this? Could we put a pedestrian bridge that crosses over from the museum to the history park? Is that possible to add one more in there? And it creates a very purposeful tie between those two spaces. But I think actually at the end of the day, I think this one was actually my favorite. Because it just seems like A, the most cost effective, and B, the most attractive. As far as use of existing space, but also adding some surprises, I guess, within the layout that makes it a blank canvas for other things like public art or like, impromptu performance space. So yeah, I really, really like this one, actually.
I think my comment is I disagree with Hassan on that. I like plan number 3 or number 1 best for a number of reasons. This one definitely looks like the most cost effective, which is an important thing the city should look at. But when we're talking about, this heart of golden, what is your ideal corridor? I think concept number 1, where the Cultural Arts Center is down next to the amphitheater, where all of those things are kind of connected. As a Public Arts Commission person, I like the Cultural Arts Center, the amphitheater, and all of that open space. As the Public Arts Commission works with the city on a master art plan coming up in the next year or two, I just think it really defines art and the cultural arts, the amphitheater, puts all of that together. And I still like the 2 giant anchor buildings of the museum and the library on each of the central zone with that whole mall in between. I think it really makes quite a grand statement. Now, whether we can afford that as a city or not, I'm not sure, but it certainly, I think, represents, from what I read, a lot of what citizens wanted with more open space in that central corridor and keeping the cultural amphitheater and all that stuff together. I really like that plan.
I actually agree with Rick on that, in the sense that there's a real opportunity to have the Cultural Arts Center almost connected as one area near the amphitheater, because the art can just spill out in very creative ways. So I definitely think that's important, an important aspect to keep in mind.
Hi, this is Bill. Carly and or Steve, can I just ask a quick question, because I always forget? The parking area directly east of the American Mountaineering Center, where Golden Solar is, who does that parking lot belong to?
Coors Tech.
It is Coors Tech. So my other question was, as you guys are looking at these separate ideas, do you also are you also taking into account a possible complete reconfiguring and redevelopment of Coors Tech and what that will do to this area as well?
Yes. And really the timing and sequence and what gets included in their project is crucial to the success of the whole corridor.
Right.
And we've had some incredibly preliminary conversations with them about if there are uses that we can't fit, would they fit in their redevelopment? So the opportunity is there. It's way too early to predict whether it will be scary or wonderful or what, but
Right.
But you betcha. And how the Mountaineering Center fits in, that the building probably won't change, but how it relates to the rest of the north side of 10th Street.
Right. It gets enveloped into a horseshoe there in a sense. Thanks.
Yeah, good question. Thank you.
I want to go back real quick. There's just one other thing to think about, and maybe it's already been thought about, but if there is a performing arts type of space, you want to make sure that there's some kind of loading dock with it. So which means that you would need some kind of area around the loading dock to bring some kind of big vehicles in or trucks in, and that would be useful if there was museums in there as well as theater, obviously. So the loading dock aspect is important for a cultural center.
Thank you. That's a good point. We'll make sure we are looking at that.
And Carly, a quick question as it relates to what Lynn just said. I know, Steve, you said you wanted everybody to kind of jump in and help you. We kind of all know a little bit about what Lynn and his group does. We know a little bit about Hassan and the Foothills Arts Center and what happens there. And we also want the Public Arts Commission to be involved. So how do you want all of those groups to come to you and present ideas for their needs within a cultural arts facility?
Well, we've been talking about this task force for at least several minutes. So that is my snarky answer. We have no idea today, but we realize that this is the perfect time to do it. Is while some of us in the organization need to focus on the creek management, it gives us an opportunity to talk about the element that we know the least about. I mean, we know how to run a city, so beats the heck out of me. But we will be thinking about it a lot in coming days. Carly might have had a real answer, but it's something we need to figure out soon. And we value all of you guys and the rest of the cultural community to help at least give the input and know the range of what could work.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think our hope is that, this is really a beginning conversation for us all to be having about this, and that we can kind of keep getting together and talking through different scenarios and different ideas, and hopefully really developing this further.
And Carly, just one quick question for you. When we go through these concepts 1, 2, and 3, there are a lot of little areas marked surplus property there. Is that something the city's holding on? I mean, I know you're not going to give it away, but are those staying surplus properties so that, like, if the fire department needs to decide to move it over into the east zone, like in concept 3, it can, or whatever? Is that kind of why some of those are left earmarked for nothing currently?
So, go ahead, Steve.
Well, one answer would be that the only one that's truly probably surplus is the very, very small one on the north side of 9th Street, right where the star is in the graphic. And it's like a third of an acre. It's really small, and it's remote from everything else. Frankly, there are some other municipal uses that are looking for homes. So they could be sold, they could be retained for other uses. It's just that so far there weren't civic uses identified for them. But during the walking tour, there was a conversation about housing, and if there was going to be housing, should that occur on one or both of those surplus properties over north of the Masonic Temple? So there's just kind of a clean slate for now.
Okay, Thank you, Steve.
In the timeline that you guys talked about in the beginning, you identified cultural facility research is happening December through February. Is there at what point will you communicate what you need from us to carry that out? I guess my question is I'm in the middle of thing, and if I need a budget for something, I'd like to know if I need to do so.
I'm thinking. I think that as Steve said, we're still kind of developing what this could look like. I guess I would imagine that it would be, I don't know. Steve, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking what we're going to ask is some of your time and expertise. We're not going to ask you to do the research or spend money.
Yeah.
Could I just say that for a couple of years, almost now, we haven't made any this year, but for a couple of years, Hassan and Lynn and Bill and the Quilt Center and I and Nathan have been meeting as a cultural arts group, and we were eyeing the lodging tax as a source of money and things like that. But there's some coherence to the group now, and it's been sort of a committee as a whole. Mike Bester at one time was the sort of the spearhead behind all of this, but I think Mike might be a little bit reticent or diffident about coming into this conversation for obvious reasons. And so it's probably time for us to think about getting our group back together. And I think there's some coherence there. We even have minutes from those meetings. And we have some documents as well that Nathan has put together and the committee's approved.
Yep. I could see that happening.
Sound quality is horrible.
I think the other thing too to think about is after you guys get to a point where you're going to approve whatever language that you're going to approve for a ballot measure, I brought this up, I think at the last public art meeting or commission meeting, was who is going to advocate for the passage of this if the city cannot be an advocate for it? And, what role do culturals play in that process? Because at the end of the day, if kind of back to what Barb was talking about earlier, if you're planning on passing this as, one big project, I can see where culturals could really help with that. If it was a piecemeal thing, and I just don't see the community really getting behind funding for a new city hall on its own as a single thing. But if the culturals are the spoonful of sugar that makes the medicine go down, how can we coordinate in a way that creates that advocacy effort? And what tools do we need from the city in order to do that? Or do we need permission from the city or blessing? I don't know the politics behind that, but it seems like the city would want to identify who that is sooner than later. I would hate for you to go through all of this work and all of this research and all this visioning only to not have a group step up and say, yes, we want this to happen.
Hassan?
Yes.
It's Bill. One thing I was going to say in response to that is that it seems like all the way back to the to our meetings, and then before that, the task force, Steve's task force. Should I call it that? Steve's task force. A cultural aspect was something I think that was looked at as being that sweetener that you're talking about, and people were much more interested in that concept than just a new city hall.
Oh yeah, the investment task force is what you're talking about.
Yes, but I think
I remember
that's
that.
always been a worthwhile idea that this would help possible passage. A cultural center.
Well, just a cultural package altogether, I think, is all
right.
Very. Once you put all this together, it's very impressive.
I agree.
In the discussions that I've had with Steve, and Steve, you can correct me, we're talking about roughly 100 megabucks for any of these three scenarios. And so unless there's something like a sales tax, it's going to have to be done piecemeal. Steve, it would be good if you could comment about that.
Well, frankly, all of the last few comments are very, very relevant and they become more timely. One of the things that council has indicated is they feel a little bit better than the rushed schedule that we might have been on to try to get to a community decision this fall. So all of those are very relevant. And if we are, yes, I slipped up and told Dendy that if we were, one of the questions that's come up is in huge order of magnitude, is there a big difference between these scenarios, 1, 2, and 3? And what we found early on was there wasn't that much difference. They all cost $1 gazillion. Or as Dendy said, 100. And that will take a good sized funding package. And the tools that are politically palatable, it's probably a 20-year sales tax. So it will be a huge conversation in the community. And I don't think Carly or I are ready to comment on Hassan's question, but of course it is one of the bigger questions that needs to be addressed in the next few months.
Carly, I have a question for you. Christy Bryce, who is the chairperson for the Public Arts Commission, she just texted me. She's having difficulty with her computer, so I'll ask a question for her. She wants to make sure in this cultural arts center concept that we have that we're representing all forms of art, and specifically I think she's referring to the PAC is looking into a arts master plan currently, and so I guess the concern is that we would like this whole corridor to include interactive art and some other pieces, and so we would like to have a voice in that and hopefully have the city budget for some of that art as well to exist in the corridor rather than the limited budget that the Public Arts Commission has currently. So that's a question from Christy.
I think that's a really great thing to bring up, Christy. And really, every time we've gotten feedback on this project overall, public art has been a major staple of everything that we've heard from the community. And just the recognition that this creek corridor, really tying it together, making it cohesive, all of that's really going to come from the connectivity pieces and public art connecting kind of the corridor all together. So I would completely agree that public art is going to be a big part of this project and will be something that we'll definitely be seeking feedback from the Art Commission on.
That's a great point. Yeah, that Christy brought up about the Arts Master Plan, because I think as we move ahead with the Arts Master Plan for the City of Golden, that can maybe help inform some of the decisions for the Heart of Golden process, or there may be some opportunities through that Arts Master Planning process to ask questions about the Heart of Golden and see how people react to it in that way. And then I don't know, I'm wondering, Steve, if we form a committee to do the Arts Master Plan, maybe that committee could also advocate for the ballot measure, perhaps, if we form a committee that is inclusive of all the folks that we're planning on including. It would be a lot of arts professionals and arts lovers in the community. So maybe that we might be able to do 2 birds with 1 stone there.
I didn't quite understand for a minute. So if it's the stakeholders for the Arts Master Plan, they are more than welcome to form their own Support Heart of Golden committee as well, or join that. You're right, but boards and commissions have the same limitations as city staff and council. But individual members of the community in however they are affiliated, as long as it's not any boards or commissions. So yeah, that would be a great group who will have interest in the corridor. I try to envision there may be larger areas that will get identified on plans, but then there will be all the small opportunities in our are strings of emeralds up and down the corridor that we'll learn about them as we develop detailed plans. But say, for example, we want a sculpture garden or a location for rotating exhibits or something. That would be big enough that we would want it to be shown. And on some of these scenarios, we're seeing little gardens and sculpture gardens.
Sure.
So I think bigger pieces want to be identified sooner than smaller pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. Or how many of those larger pieces can be within, a concept.
Steve, thank you for that clarification. I think that will help at least the Public Arts Commission approach the Arts Master Plan in a way that does what the Arts Master Plan needs to do, but also to help the city find places along the corridor that they can recommend particular things to.
Charlotte, can I ask another question about the drawings?
Sure.
I've been very interested in this discussion about finance and how to make it happen and all that, but I do have a question about the drawings.
Do you want me? Sorry, do you want to look at the drawings again, or just?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, was there a particular concept you want me to zoom in on for you?
No, actually, the same question is pertinent to all of them, so take your pick.
Okay.
Well, actually, maybe I do have a preference. There was one that showed the walking tour, or the pathway along 10th Street. I think. Yeah, go down to 3 and see if it was there.
Okay, sorry, this one.
Oh, yeah, that is the one. Okay.
Okay.
My question was, I was envisioning making this walk along the creek, and I find when I'm standing near the visitor center and I'm deciding how to get down 10th Street, I always go along the creek because it's shadier. And I just wanted to comment that I think expecting people to walk along 10th Street, you better put more of those little green balls to make more shade if you want to entice people to walk along that way. And my question is, will we still have a walking path along the creek? It's not actually showing on the drawing.
Absolutely. We would always have a walking. We hope to, I think in all of the plans, enhance the creekside kind of connectivity. So that's something we hope to accomplish in any of the plans because it's a extremely valuable piece of the corridor. And I think the shady part's a good point about the Festival Street. I don't know how much of a path it would be. I guess I'd want to see more of some of the documents we have, Steve, looking at what that kind of path looks like through the whole corridor. Because I don't know if that's exactly how they're making it. I still think they're focusing on the creek path being the main kind of walking way, and this would be kind of the event or festival kind of way that you would go for those reasons, and not necessarily for like a lovely stroll.
Steve, did I hear you say that there wasn't a huge difference in cost between concept A, 1, 2, and 3?
Back in March, we have not costed these, but back in March, the ones that we presented like the day before the sit-down, were all order of magnitude the same.
Okay, all right. I think that, one other comment that I would make comparing this plan that's on the screen to concept number 1 is that whole concept of a festival street where Water Street might come around through Parfait Park, go across the street, and then connect the museum and the library together. Really ties east, central, and west zones together so well. The thing I didn't like about this plan is, it takes you from a park-like setting back out onto the street around existing buildings and then back into the open space. And it becomes a bit detached, I think, in my opinion. And if there's not a huge amount of difference in cost, I just really think, and again, maybe I'm speaking from the position of more of the Public Arts Commission, but having this long corridor go all the way through East, Central, and West Zone just ties the whole Heart of Golden project perfectly together.
Thank you. That's a good comment.
Hi, it's it's Bill real quick over here too. And this may be more of a statement than a question, but I think I see that, and a good example, that Katie Souders on this call. And I hope as we go forward with a cultural arts center, and what that means, that we do remember that people like the American Mountaineering Center, let's say, is host to the Environmental Film Festival. And I hope that we take into account sharing of these events through the year, because there are several of these other organizations who derive reasonable income from them. And I would hate to see
the cowboy poets.
Absolutely. Sorry, I forgot the poets for a second. But those are serious, I would think, revenue sources for some of the other facilities in town. And I just hope that there's just a sharing of these events or discussion of it as we move forward. That's it.
Thank you, Bill. That's a really good point.
Similar to Dendy's comment, it would be foolish for us to design, and we certainly can't afford a 1,000-seat auditorium. So being mindful of what Mines has, as well as our nonprofit partners, is all part of it. What are the needs, and how can we partner with existing facilities such as AMC?
Well, I know Daniel was here too. And of course, the School of Mines Geology Museum isn't going to move, but flexible space in a cultural arts center for, traveling exhibits and exhibits from other culturals in the city would be, I think, really important. And I think we've discussed that since the beginning. Hopefully, I think we have.
I certainly don't want to School of Mines, but I would like to say that the people at the School of Mines, in particular Kirsten Volpe, has been really interested in trying to be cooperative with the School of Mines and make the economics very feasible for the Jefferson Symphony to be in the large auditorium. We've tried to find other auditoriums to move to when there was an asbestos problem for a renovation of the Green Center, and we just couldn't find another auditorium that was close to the golden area to occupy.
Well, I think we're kind of wrapped up with showing the stuff that we have to show, but happy to listen to any other comments that people have. I really appreciate you all taking the time to be at this meeting and share your thoughts. This has been really valuable and brought up a lot of really good points for us to think about.
I really thank you for inviting us all as well.
Thank you very much, Carly, for the presentation.
Thanks, Carly.
What would you like from this group next?
I think we will start planning kind of our next steps, and we'll reach out to you all, and hopefully we can get together again and talk through some of this stuff.
Great.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all the work you've put into this.
Absolutely.
It does mean a lot.
Thank you all.